You ready?
Yes. Hold on one second. I'll tell you when. And go on.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Lenore Walker, and this is the COVID IPV task force. We're a subgroup of the COVID task force that APA, in its many divisions, has formed. So we're an interdivisional task force. And a number of us come on these conferences, we call them roundtables, every Thursday at noon Eastern time. So welcome. We're on Facebook Live and we're on Zoom. And we hope that you will join in our conversation. Today's conversation is going to be about post-election results, both the stressors that went on in the United States, but also all over the world watching our new form of elections. I was going to say crazy, but as a psychologist, I was afraid to use that term. And so many of us are working with both our patients, with our friends, with our family, and ourselves in dealing with the unknowns about what has happened, both the week of trauma as votes were being counted, and now what's happening as a new transition government is attempting to form. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about some of those stressors, some of the anxieties, some of the information that we do know, some of it that we don't know, that we speculate on. So we hope you join us. Join in. You can add comments on Facebook if you're on the COVID IPV page, or those of you who have our Zoom number can jump in that way as well. So we're going to start with trying to relax ourselves a little bit. And Dr. Eileen I was going to introduce everybody first. So you met Giselle Gaviria, Dr. Gaviria from Miami and Palm Beach, Florida. I'm also from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Dr. Marilyn Safir, who is from Haifa, Israel. We have Dr. Lawrence Gerstein, who's from Ball State University, Dr. Michaela Mendelson from Boston, Dr. Eileen Serlin from California, Rita Rivera, who's also here in Florida, and Dr. Patricia Villavicencio Carrillo, who is from Madrid, Spain. So you can see we're all over the world, and other people will be jumping on and joining us. Some you'll see on Zoom, some will be talking because they can't get onto camera at this point. So let's go back. We're going to start with Dr. Serlin, who's going to try to help us get into this topic with some extra tools to help us relax a little bit, because it does cause anxiety in me, and I'm sure for other people as well. So take it away, Eileen Serlin.
Thanks. Dr. Walker, thanks a lot for your invitation here. I was feeling in myself and friends some of the enormous impact both the elections and after the elections had on me. And I just, before our conversation started, I thought I would invite everybody, if you don't mind, maybe close your eyes for a minute and just first of all feel, because we actually haven't had time to really digest a lot of this. Sort of your response leading up to the elections. This is the stress part, and we'll get to the relaxation part afterward. But if you can kind of remember or feel again where the tension was your heart beating faster? Were you glued to the television, the news? You know, part of the refrain during all of this was "I can't breathe." That came all through COVID, election. Many of the pandemics were marked by that phrase, "I can't breathe." I know I was having trouble breathing. So if you can kind of feel your way back into pre-election anticipation, hopes, fears, and let's see if we can get it to the other side of that. But working up to it, just some of the additional stresses on top of COVID, because of course, COVID introduced new ways of election, mail-in ballots, all kinds of new stressors. Are things going to be on time? Are they going to be interrupted? Will there be violence? And sorry to do this, but if you can feel in yourself where those tensions are, where were the worries? What are you holding? What are you holding from all your clients, friends, family? Those who were for one side of the elections, for another. And we as therapists also have been holding for so many people their emotions, their worries. So if you can feel for just a moment where those stresses were, what you've been carrying as the days to the election are getting closer. I remember we all said, I can't believe it's 2 months, it's 1 month, it's 2 weeks. It's 1 week, it's countdown, it's 24/7 coverage, it's 5 days, 4 days, 3 days. Did you take time off from work? What did you do? 2 days, 1 day, the news, day and night, the news. Were you glued? What did you do? How did you feel? Countdown. Can we go to sleep? What happens when we wake up in the morning? Is it going to be a recapitulation of the other elections where we did know, we didn't know, we hoped, it changed? And as we're watching the results start trickling in and the news of how the elections were being handled state by state and who's observing them, and police and not police, and secretaries of state and lawyers getting on to predict, all the talking heads. And just feel a minute as the stress is mounting, the countdown is going on. And then the night of the elections, did you go to sleep? Did you go to sleep? Who was with you at the time? What did you say? The next day, results, yes, no, more news, more news, more news, emails, friends. And finally, Saturday morning, where were you when you heard the news? How did you feel? Now just begin to breathe out and start releasing some of that stress. where you're holding it in your body, your face, your eyes, shoulders, back, sitting. Begin to just let go of all that stress. And really begin to release what we've been holding from our friends, our families. We as therapists have been carrying for so many people. This part is over now. Just let it register for now, this part. There will be more, but for now, something big just happened. Just take another moment and really let it drain out of you, all the holding, all the anticipation. We came through it. And I think with that, with just really having paid attention, we can now begin to share what was it like for you and those you know.
There was a lot of buildup. A lot of buildup. Just between my neck, even my ears, I guess it's from hearing everything. Hearing everything that was going on and just reciting, being in the car, listening to the radio. Then we decided to get a new TV, a bigger TV. So everything was definitely magnified. Seeing what was going on minute by minute. Just nerve-wracking. And all the implications that there would be, thinking a lot about my clients, family in different parts of the world. So a lot of that was on there.
How do you feel now, Susanna?
I was so surprised, shocked really, that it was not a landslide for the Democrats. I couldn't imagine it not being a referendum for a change. Things hadn't improved for me. In fact, they had gotten worse during this period of time in many areas. And I just couldn't accept what was happening. So the tension was, I still feel the tension. Interesting, I feel it. This time I'm feeling it in my hand, which is filled with arthritis and will have to have surgery soon. And all of a sudden, instead of feeling it in my back or my neck, which I often feel it in, I'm feeling it in my hand. I'm not quite sure why it went there. Interesting.
I was experiencing terror on one hand, and then the other hand, going in the direction you were feeling sure, that this was going to be wiped out. And it was just, going back and forth. I vote by absentee ballot because of being here. And my ballot came very early and I filled it out and they were announcing another lockdown. So I ran to the post office and hearing about all this, the machinations they were making with the American post office, I decided to send my ballot in by registered mail. and it was going to cost me something like 129 shekel, which is almost $50. And I started filling out the papers, and I realized that the address was for a post office box. So the person couldn't sign it. So I sent it registered so that the postman had to register that the letter was received, because I just had these fears, that God, what's going to happen with these things? And during the COVID, I've hardly turned on the television. I've been reading and walking around outside. And all of a sudden, I just became addicted, to the television. The television's on. I kept checking. I have the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN. I kept checking. And the first few days, I was in terror. I thought, if this man gets another 4 years, that's the end of the United States. It's the end of the world for me. And then when he started losing out in Pennsylvania, and that started going, that's when I started feeling relief. But even now I know that it can't be turned back. I'm so upset with these stories and machinations, and I find myself wishing him evil, wishing him illnesses, wishing him a heart attack. It's having to deal with this kind of feeling on my own that I can hate at such a level. This man is destroying not just the United States, the world order, and now the way he's carrying on during this period of time, it's a feeling of being totally hopeless. Why can't they do something? Why can't they certify the votes? Let's finish with this. It's just, I've been most having is sleeping. A couple of times I woke up in the middle of the night, I opened my phone to see what happened this year. Just,
Yeah.
I don't remember ever, even during the wars, being under shelling during the Iraq War and some of the other things, I never experienced this feeling of terror and anxiety, or the feeling of the end of the world. And it's just traumatic, really traumatic.
And ongoing still for you, Marilyn. And yeah,
definitely. And it was interesting, we were talking some more. There are many Israelis that feel that Trump has done such wonderful things for Israel. And I said, what did he do? He moved the sign from the embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That's basically what he did. And he rescued us from Dubai with 650,000 people. We were under terrible threat from them, and that's amazing peace treaty that he signed, with all of our neighbors. It's just absolutely ridiculous. My feeling, and the people that I'm friendly with, is that he set back the Middle East. The two-state solution, which I think is the only thing that's viable for this part of the world, he's made it pretty much impossible. And I think without it, my prediction is that in 30 years, Israel won't be here anymore. So,
wow.
It's interesting how it's not just the United States that's feeling what has happened. Watching the television set was something that I had to turn off to get through these last couple of months. We rarely would turn it on. And towards as the election would build up, the one news program we allowed ourselves to watch a day would be filled with advertisements from all these candidates, one on top of another, saying bad things about the other one. It was the most negative campaign I can ever remember. And we finally, the day after the election, they weren't on anymore. There were no more ads. And I felt, I can watch television again. And now it's back again with, although there is less of him on the news, which is much better for me. And I'm so pleased that Biden is moving on with the transition, even though Trump is trying to, and the Republicans are trying to stop it, which just infuriates me. I'm so angry about that. So that's causing me more anger. I don't know if it's translated into stress yet, but I am just furious with them.
Lenore, can I share with you, you mentioned abroad, and so, as you know, I teach in China. I've continued teaching, but now it's all by Zoom. And I had a supervision group that I do Tuesday night, which was the elections. Tuesday night, I had something Monday night, Wednesday, and I tried to see if I could cancel those. I was explaining to the students that I'm just going to be glued to the television. And it was so sweet because they were so worried about me and the United States. This is from China. And, you know, of course, the irony is we all have a lot to say about the way our governments have been with each other. And I think the beautiful thing is people to people, they're just human beings, and they're loving and sweet, and they were concerned about me. And we had a big celebration afterward. There's a lot of, you know, congratulations after the election, but you know, mostly they were watching what I was going through beforehand, and knew that it was important, and knew that things had not been good for them either. So
that's so nice.
Yeah, I got lots of little hearts and good wishes.
I was on Saturday, I was at my writing group. You know, I've been taking this class for 3 years, and it was my graduation Saturday night for 3 years of trying to write novels and fiction. And I've been learning all these tools. And so I was on it. We're doing it on Zoom now, of course, like everything else. And I was in a large group where we had a lecture about winning and losing. Which was a perfect theme for this weekend. And all of a sudden, somebody interrupts I think it's not the lecture part, it was already a discussion part, but interrupts it and puts their computer by the window where there was the loudest banging of pots and honking of horns. And all of a sudden, everybody all over the country were doing the same thing. It was when it was announced that Pennsylvania had been called for Biden. It was amazing, the joy that was expressed through all that noise.
I was awakened by the same thing. I heard a whole lot outside my window, hooping and hollering, and I in my sleep, I figured out what it was about. Looked up to the news.
Interesting. Well, let's move on a little bit. Giselle, you were going to tell us a little of what's going on, what the news are telling us, what the literature is telling us about what's happening.
So I have a couple of stats that I just wanted to share with everyone, in particular in regards to the elections and how we feel about it. About 68%, almost 70 of US adults said this presidential election is a significant source of stress in their life, and up from 56 who said so in 2016. So it's significantly increased over this time period of 4 years, according to a survey conducted by the Harris Poll on behalf of APA, the American Psychological Association. you know, a lot of this uncertainty is really becoming a stressor for all of us, not only because of the election, but also COVID and the rising spikes all over the world. So really taking a hold of this uncertainty and being in the here and now are some of the things that they're recommending as some mindfulness. And, you know, another issue that a lot of individuals are talking about is this polarization that has been defined by this year being so dramatic in 2020. And it's interestingly in 2016, not 2016, my apologies. In 1960, about 4% of Democrats and 4% of Republicans said that they would be disappointed if their children married someone from the opposite political party. But in 2018, 45% of Democrats and 35% of Republicans said so. So that's becoming more of an issue within families, within relationships that we have at work, at home, and beyond. This is also according to a study done by APA. And I just wanted to mention real quickly some of the things that we can use to manage a lot of the symptoms of anxiety and uncertainty is distracting yourself, exercising, walking around. I know that that's been a huge thing, from the rallies that have been set up, the music, dance-offs that have been happening in the middle of the street, individuals singing "Oh Caroline" or the Spanish or even the Spanish song "Pa la calle, pa fuera," which translates "Get out of here, we're throwing you out to the street." Pots and pans. That has been a common theme, at least in the Latin American television news in regards to replaying that song consistently. Aromatherapy is going to be very good for all of us. Breathing techniques, as well as we just tried earlier today. Communicating with those who you love. Creating a happiness list during this time. Things that make you just feel good about yourself and about your well-being. So creating a list of things that are calming for you, smelling flowers, taking a walk like we just mentioned, you know, calling a friend, petting your dog. And then minimize the amount of media. I can't repeat that enough. I think in the last couple of presentations, that's what I keep telling everybody is stop social media. Granted, still join us, but stop the amount of the social media, a lot of the news networks that are going on right now. So I hope that this is a little bit helpful, at least of lists and some stats that are pretty interesting in regards to how it's really polarizing and dividing a lot of us, unfortunately, but finding those common grounds between all of us to help us through this.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. It almost sounds like in religious families about if people marry outside their religion.
Exactly. That's the interesting tidbit that I noticed.
Yeah,
that a lot
it's
of
almost 2/3
Mhm.
of the population, and that's a huge number of people. It's staggering. Patricia, what's going on in Spain?
Hi, everyone. Here in Spain, we have our own political turmoil, which I don't follow because I don't want to feel upset or angry. But still, I get information through my WhatsApp, for example. And all what I get through especially WhatsApp, because I just post things for COVID IPV or for my professional Instagram, things that I'm thinking for my patients. But still, I have all these videos and posts that friends or colleagues send me about the conspiracy regarding US elections. And although I don't follow, I haven't been following the elections as much as you have done being US citizens, though. Me as a foreign person and living in Spain and Europe will be impact for any results having in your country, in the US, whether it's Republican or it's the Democrats. So I have to say something. I really am fed up with all the politics, even right or the left or right or the center. At this time of my life, I don't believe in anyone. And especially during COVID times, because during COVID times, all these measures and health measures have been politicized by one side or the other. So we as citizens and me as a clinical psychologist, I find very hard to not being impacted by all this happening around the world, especially regarding politics and all the politics regarding health measures, and everyone who is sending messages regarding conspiracies. And so I just posted one post in Spanish to my to the parents of my patients, saying, please just watch the news once a day, and please just follow one information, valid information coming from the Ministry of Health, and please don't give the kids contradictory information like this, like who is conspiring against the others. Kids, today I had one kid, and he's only 11 years. I'm not going to tell you the case, but one of the things that he's very concerned is about COVID, and the mother, and regarding how he's not at his school. They don't allow kids that bring their lunch, because we have heavy lunch in our country, right? So the mother sends him his lunch, and they don't allow kids now to use the microwave to heat it up. And the mother and me we weren't that sure if he's concerned about the line, and he doesn't want to be in a line waiting for warming, heating up his lunch. So we're having kids concerned about COVID, and don't even get in his lunch during lunchtime. So we have to stop, and all this information is getting to our kids and younger generations. And so I'm really concerned about kids and teens during these times all around the world. Stress harms brain development, and we all know by research that impacts your health during all your life. So this kind of stress, COVID plus elections, conspiracies, and so on, plus economical crisis, parents stressed by losing their jobs. I don't want to be a kid at this moment. So sorry, I've taken too much time. That's my point of view.
Yeah, we are also very lucky to have today Dr. Lawrence Gerstein, who is the incoming president-elect right now no conspiracy theories about this, of APA's Division 52, which is the division concerned with people in international psychology. And so it just seems so helpful to have Dr. Gerstein with us. He is part of our task force, and with his new duties is not always able to jump on. So hopefully you can give us some insights from your perch, Dr. Gerstein.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'll start I'll start with the personal. I've been emotionally exhausted for the last couple of weeks, and it's unlike me. Unlike a number of you, I have not watched TV in 4 years, the news at all. And one of my struggles for 2 weeks before the election was whether I would watch the news election night and whether I would look at my phone election night. And I joked that I really needed a Gestalt therapist to help me dialogue about, split myself up and figure out what was going on. But I kept that dialogue going and talked with friends about it and colleagues about it, and they shared where they were. So I didn't watch. I wound up not watching Tuesday night, and I did not look at my phone Tuesday night. And I was amazed that I didn't look at my phone. That was very different too. Though my phone was sitting near me, and I made the mistake of having it with the face up. And about 10 o'clock, one of my friends sent me a text, and my phone lit up, and I happened to look, and it said, "Are you freaking out yet?" And that got me like, oh, should I turn on the news or look at my phone? And I was still really good. I just held back and didn't do it, The next morning, Wednesday morning, I did look at my phone and looked at the news a couple of times during the course of the day, but still didn't watch TV until Saturday. And I watched TV Saturday night. And I haven't watched the news since Saturday night. But yeah, I'm emotionally exhausted, and I exercise and meditate, and every night I go to sleep, I think, oh, tonight I'm going to get a good night's sleep, and I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll be refreshed and be able to go about my day. But I can get little tasks done, but I can't seem to do the writing or like the thinking that I'm accustomed to doing. And so unlike some people that, are spending a lot of time really looking at the news and looking at the social media, I'm not doing it. So like there's some kind of energy happening that I don't, quite completely understand. But yeah, I think that even though I'm much more hopeful about kind of where this is all evolving, I think the next 6 months to a year are still going to bring us a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of confusion. I will say that I have some close connections with law enforcement in the United States, and I have talked with law enforcement and shared some of my thoughts on what they see happening, what I see happening. And if it continues that Biden is inaugurated, I think the expectation is that the Justice Department will more closely manage the violence that we've been seeing, and just the large number of guns that we've seen on the street that in some states are illegal and would result in an arrest right away. And in other states where it's legal, but people have bringing out rifles that are not permitted, but law enforcement hasn't cracked down on it. So the belief is, I think some of you might realize that police don't like surprises. They don't like large groups. They don't like people on the street with guns, and in the United States. And it's very personal. So, this group is about domestic violence. You know what it's like when police show up to a domestic violence scene where only a couple of people involved. You multiply it by 100, 200 people with guns and potentially dangerous. They're afraid they won't go home safely at night to their family or during the day. So I think they have a personal investment in kind of cracking down on the things that we've seen in the United States that, folks comparing this to the Vietnam War. I was protesting during the Vietnam War. I don't recall like this kind of level of guns and, violence happening in the United States. So I'm kind of hopeful in that regard that I think there'll be a cap. And I think there'll be more regulations put on social media so that we won't be inundated. What I wanted to talk about too is that what concerns me probably the most is that what we're seeing now is not something that's new. It's been under the surface for a really long time in the United States. I think as psychologists, we've done a wonderful job teaching people to be advocates and activists and sticking up for different issues. I think we've done a horrible job teaching people to be bridge builders. And I think that we've got to figure out how to do that. And we all have to figure out how we can individually do it. So that we can find spaces to talk to people who are polar opposite to us. Now, not everybody's going to be able to do it. This is for sure. If you've experienced, like very severe oppression and you're marginalized and you haven't sorted your way through all of that in some way, and you haven't gotten to a place where you can, deal that way, then it's understandable that you're not going to be a bridge builder. But I think some of us can do it. Some of us can, step into those spaces and listen, and we just have to listen to each other, it's got to start locally. And, what's striking to me, and I have friends all over the spectrum, the ones that there are many people who are sincere. They're passionate about the fact that they think the country's going to go down the drain with Biden as president. And they really care about the future of our country, just like the people on the other side. And so we share all of that in common. But in between that, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of emotion. And when these emotions are high, it's hard to hear each other. So, and I'll share with you an example of someone that's just kind of remarkable. Her name is Edith Jolson. I just remembered it as I was talking. She's a Holocaust survivor. She's no longer alive. And she was a psychologist, and she talked about how she worked her way through her experience to a point where she was forgiving the Nazis for what they had done to her, what they had done to her family, and really powerful. I mean, not everybody is capable of it, but we have to do our best to try to find the people who can do it. And because if we don't, my view is if we don't give voice and space to the folks that we disagree with, and we believe that, you know, Biden's going to save us and solve it, it's not going to happen. Just not going to happen at all. It's got to happen really locally. I think I put up in the chat a book that came out recently, Beyond the Bubble, by a psychologist, Tanya Israel. It's a brilliant book. It's a book not for academics. It's not a book for, you know, that you're going to see citations in. It's a book written for the public on how to have conversations across the political divide, you know, and how to not lose yourself, still maintain your values, still maintain respect for yourself, but at the same time, you know, show some respect for the other person. So I'll stop here, other than saying that if we can turn the volume down, just turn it down, it'll go a long way, I think, to the kind of healing that we need it. And we'll still have our activists, we'll still have our advocates, they'll still be out there, you know, they'll still be out there.
I have a
more
question.
bridge builders. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for you. I can handle discussions with people who have different views. I can't handle lies and mistruths. And I don't know how to handle that, because the minute you point that out to somebody, the discussion's over. And so any advice, any tips? I'm sure there are other people who feel the same way.
Yeah, my immediate response is I have a problem with that too. I do. You know, I think initially my response is always to confront it, but I think, you know, I'm trying not call it out, you know? I mean, there's a reason why people are lying, right? Some people lie, they don't even know it, right? Some people lie, they absolutely know it. So what's the motivation maybe of the lie? Yeah, I don't really have a great answer for you. Maybe someone else does.
I heard an interesting discussion over the weekend about the fact that many people who supported the current regime were made promises by them that were totally unrealistic. They never could happen. And yet it was near and dear to their hearts. So they wanted it to. Sometimes it's economic, sometimes it's personal, but whatever those promises were. And so what some of them are holding on to is the minute they have to give up that dream that the promise might be there, that it'll never happen. And that's sort of a grieving and mourning process that many people have not been able to do.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think the one challenge that we have is diversifying the content that comes in our experience. And so, you know, people get locked into particular social media feeds, particular, you know, news media, and then that algorithm continues to reward them for doing it. And so then, you know, you're constantly told you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. So to admit then, after hearing this information, you know, over and over and over again for quite some time, that, yeah, Dr. Walker, I'm going to give up this belief. Whoa, it's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah.
Did you see the film on the social dilemma?
Yeah.
I really recommend it. It's terrifying because it's not so much a conspiracy theory, but that these algorithms are being created. In effect, Dr. Walker, when you're talking about it, how do you talk to somebody who's got such a different perception of the world? They do live in a different reality than we do. So how do you talk to somebody who not only sees the world differently, but will then understand that they were fed lies, actually believes this reality is the true reality? And I have some dear friends and some clients who now think the New York Times and other staples of my life is just liberal media. They don't listen to it. We've all gone off the cliff. Their media is the right one. And so the polarization of the different realities so many of us are living in now, one from another, makes those bridges so hard to build. We're all standing in different realities.
Yeah. I in a diversity class that I teach, I have a weekly assignment for them where they have to identify 3 media sources, social media, any kind of media, that they never have been exposed to before. And then learn, and they have to be media sources that are reporting things that are conflicting with their current belief structure. They're reading things or watching things or listening things about different populations, diverse populations. And interesting thing that's happening is that their algorithms are changing on their phones, right? Because they're now like spreading it out. And now they're starting to talk about, oh, yeah, this is what these folks are being told. This is what I'm being told. This is what, and then trying to embrace the challenges, embracing all these viewpoints and figuring out like, well, where is the truth, if it exists at all, right? It's really tough.
Larry, I have a problem because on one hand, I think of what Lenore said before, all of these people that voted for the Trump point of view, like 49% almost of the people that cast their ballots, and they don't believe in diversity. They believe that only one way of life is the way to go. And I cannot see myself accepting, I found it difficult in talking with friends who could say, well, Trump is a terrible person, but I like what he's done, and so I'm going to support him. I just felt like there's no way I can have a conversation with that person. And I'm very concerned about this large percentage of Americans that don't like people of color, that don't like people who aren't Christian or born again Christian, which seems to be, I cannot see myself accepting them or becoming friends with them. I'm sorry, I just don't feel
Yeah,
like.
I totally respect that. I totally can respect that. Yeah. Go ahead, Patricia. Yeah.
I want to share something that might help. In 2006, I was involved in a child trauma network, which all the colleagues were from the Arab world, French speaking, and had very good, nice friends in Lebanon and during the shellings and the conflict, okay? And in my mental health center, there was, and Lenore, I think you met him, Odette Grazer, he's Israeli, he's a psychiatrist, and nobody talked about this. So it was all over the news, and especially me in working with this subject of child trauma network and war disasters. And so one day I knocked at his door and I said, listen, we weren't that close at that time. So I said, listen, Odette, we have to talk. and I sat and said, listen, I need to know what's your, what you think about all this. I know you live here in Spain, and I have very dear friends in Beirut, and you have all your family in Israel. So we need to talk about this and what's going on in this relationship we have as colleagues. And I don't want to talk about what came a long time ago, but we came up to be the best of friends. So I needed to ask him about his point of view, and he listened to mine at that time. And we were like talking very close about subjects that nobody dared to talk about because nobody wanted to hurt his feelings, or people that he might have thought whatever about me working on this network. And now we are like, he's like a brother to me. Since I, decided to knock at his door and office and said, listen, we have to talk about this. And maybe we won't be having the same point of view, but we need to talk about this. And I don't remember what we talked about. We both were concerned about the other side. Of course, he has family in Israel, and I have very dear friends in Beirut. But I'm not Israeli, I'm not Lebanese. And so I give you this idea. And another thing that I agree with Lawrence is that when we hang up with people thinking just the way we do, we have a bias. So we get together, fine, we're all happy, we all believe in the same things, so we don't argue with anyone, but it's not the real life. Real life is people thinking in diverse manners, ways, and religion beliefs, political beliefs, and we have the right to have them, to have different point of views. And if somebody hates me because I have another point of view, that I think that not everyone that believe in one faith or political view will follow all what I hate of that thing or idea. If you get the chance to listen, and why do you think like that? Why are you voting for this guy or the other, right? So I think I have this very nice and dear experience that I had to share with you, and ended up in a very, very profound friendship between him and me. I don't know if it helps.
Can I say one other thing, Lenore? Yeah, I know we're out of time here, right? So, Marilyn, I think you're definitely entitled to whatever you feel comfortable doing, and I would not want to promote that all of us need to, go into those kind of spaces. I do want to say though that it's problematic to group all 70 million people that voted one way and all 75 people that voted the other way into categories, because when you start breaking it down, there are people that voted for Trump that care about diversity, they care about lots of things that other people care about that voted for Biden. but for one reason or another, people, you know, and I have friends that voted for Trump, you know, and they tell me why, but I know they don't fit some caricature of what we think the people are that voted for Trump. So I think we need to be careful about that, and not grouping them all together.
I didn't want to give the impression that that's what I was doing, but it's more of a concern that it seems to me that many of the people on that are around Trump are not willing to consider or to think about any other kind of thing. That was my reaction more, coming against people that are unwilling to consider that there are other ways of looking at things. And that was really my concern.
Right, right, right. Yeah, one other thing, you know, the Chinese Chinese philosopher from thousands of years ago had a great expression. So even if you know you don't have very good intentions of getting to know somebody from the other side, it might help you. He said, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
That's a great note.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. It's really kind of brilliant. And I think if you can keep your enemies closer with genuineness, you know, that's even better. But that's not always the case.
As we were talking, I was thinking of the word respect. That if we can learn to accept and respect somebody without having to change them. Conversations where you're trying to change people never go very well, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and if the person harms you, you know, if the person's really harming you, then, you know, well, it's
That's
done.
right.
It's a done deal, right? It's a done deal, but.
Right, and if the person is trying to tell me that I have to be their way, and because that's what they believe, then I can't have a conversation with them either. But, well, this has been, we could just keep going on. This has been an absolutely fabulous presentation. I'm sorry some of our non-video participants weren't able to jump in. We've been sort of hogging the conversation. But let's continue. Next week, we haven't figured out the topic yet. But we're getting very close to the holidays. And so there's been some requests that we really talk about how do we prepare for the holidays in COVID times. Are you going to do a Thanksgiving dinner with, you know, I often do dinners with my family, which could extend to 20 or 30 people. Not this year. Maybe we'll try to talk about that and the upcoming holidays from Thanksgiving on. Even heard of a new one that's being celebrated in Israel, Maryland, with the Ethiopian Jews. In between Hanukkah and I think and Christmas. So, you know, who knows? As we're celebrating holidays by ourselves, I guess we could. So thank you, Dr. Serlin, Dr. Gerstein, Dr. Gaviria, Dr. Stafford, Dr. Villavicencio, and I know that Rita Rivera was on, and I saw Brittany on, and I saw Denise
that was on.
I know Denise was able to join us, but we didn't see her or hear from her, so I'm sorry, Denise. Next time you come on, we definitely
it was nice seeing everybody. I really enjoyed the conversation today. Very important.
Very good. I'm so glad that you've been able to be with us. And for everybody else, join us next Thursday. So far, we're sticking to Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern time. We may have some changes to announce next week too, but right now that's where we're at. And if any of you want to reach us, we're on Facebook, COVID IPV. We're on Twitter, at COVID IPV. We're on Instagram. We're on other social media as well. So try us and we'll love to hear from you. Take care and see you next week.
Bye, everybody.